The announcement by Pfizer that their COVID vaccine had 95% efficacy in clinical trials results is significant news for the health of our citizens around the world. This is a tremendous achievement, and it could not have been done without the dedication of scientists and people who work for Pfizer and BioNTech. BioCT is honored to have an opportunity to talk with Angela Hwang and learn about your journey growing up in South Africa to becoming the group president of Pfizer's biopharmaceutical group worldwide, reaching patients in more than 125 countries. Hello, Angela, and welcome.
Hello, Dawn. Thank you for having me here today.
Angela, your journey is quite remarkable, and I would like you to share your story with our audience. So maybe we could begin. Would you please tell us a little bit about your childhood and how your experience in South Africa during apartheid helped form the passions and challenges that you had?
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you for a question that takes me way back into my childhood. So as you said, I grew up in South Africa, and it was a very, very interesting time, and definitely formed very much who I am today, the decisions I make and the things that are important to me. But I think, when you grow up in the world where apartheid is really defines, it did limit me in many ways when I was growing up, in terms of where I could go to school or where I couldn't go to school, which probably is the more accurate way of describing it, where you couldn't live, what you couldn't do. But I would say that, while that was what it was, and I guess when you're a child, you don't know what you don't know, right? You think that this is what you have. I'm so grateful to my parents who painted a world that was much bigger than the one that I lived in. And one where, I was always and infinitely, I think today it still is a part of me, I'm just always curious. I'm curious about everything. I have 1,000 questions for anything and everything. And I do think that that sense of curiosity was one that was fostered by an environment that was very isolated from the world. And then I think just this realization with time, as you're growing up, that things were just different for you. How is it that there are people around you that have things and can do things and can live places that you don't? After a while, you start to realize as you get older that there is something there. And so I think that instilled in me, beyond the curiosity, one of resourcefulness, that I started to realize that yes, even within limitations, they don't have to limit you. You can do something about it and you can rise above it. So I became very resourceful, very young. And I also think that today, probably the way it, what I care about at work, which is creating an environment of fairness and that people are treated fairly, is one that I think has carried with me from the time I was young, just given the environment that I lived in. And so, net, when you think about how you grew up, and then you think about where you are now, maybe in many ways, I thank God that I grew up in an environment that was so different and not plentiful. It gave me a strong backbone, gave me incredible inner strength, gave me a lot of determination. I think you'll always hear South Africans described that way, that they're gritty, they're determined, they're hardworking. And, probably the best phrase is you just really have nothing to lose. So why wouldn't you give it a try?
You are so inspiring to me. I love hearing that. I really do. So at what point in your travel or education, etc., did you decide to leave South Africa? And at what point, where were you at in your life when you first left? What were you pursuing when you left?
Well, I pursued an undergraduate degree in microbiology and biochemistry. And at the time I was working for the South African breweries, actually doing research in yeast fermentation. And definitely not something I wanted to do. And so it's actually my MBA that got me out of my old job and into a new line of thinking and a new mindset. So I'm very grateful for that pivot that happened for me. And that's what brought me to the US. It brought me to Cornell. And then, from there, things became very different, and much happier with my MBA than I was with my my science degrees, even though, of course, I love the science. And that's why the job I have today is the best of both worlds, because you have the intellectual curiosity of what science can do, and what you can create out of science. But actually, what I get to do is the business end of it. And so, not knowing it, it became the perfect blend of two things.
With all of the responsibility you have at Pfizer and managing 26,000 people, I just want to know, how in the world do you juggle all of this? You must be on Zoom and phone calls 24/7.
Yes, I work a lot, and work is a big part of my life, but equally is my family. And so I think through time, what I would say to, I say this to myself, but also I would say to all my listeners here today, it's that, you really need to find a way to do both, because when one is sacrificed, you can't really do the other. And so to find that balance is, in fact, the art form of this life. I think about my role today like I think about all my other roles. They just got bigger, but it didn't change in terms of how I thought about them. My attitude, my mindset, how I treat people, it's really just all the same. But the way you do it is through teamwork. I don't do this on my own. I have a team of people that help me run these businesses, right? So the 7 or 8 businesses that we have, each one of them has a leader. We work hard together, we trust each other, and that's the only way you can run large businesses, is that it's not about you, or it's not about me in this instance. It's about my effectiveness in creating a strong vision, a strong sense of purpose, strong objectives, and then letting people go and do their work. And at that point, you become an enabler and a support system for people. But that's the only way you can run large businesses.
If you could go back, what would you say to a younger version of Angela about things that you've learned along the way that you might maybe share with people, recommend to people? What lessons have you learned?
First of all, that I second guessed myself too much along the way. So, one great example of that is the time that I spent doing research at the breweries. That was 5 years where I knew that this wasn't right for me, but I kept second guessing that maybe there was something there that I didn't see, that there was a spark that I didn't find. But at some point you just have to sit back and say, you know what, it really isn't here, and we should just move on. And I didn't know that when I was younger, right? And I see these patterns in myself as time goes by. Of course, they're shorter and shorter now because you're more mature and you have enough, data points or life experiences to realize that. But I think that the second guessing is definitely one.
With what you've learned along the way, where do you see yourself maybe 20 years from now, or what are your goals moving forward beyond the pandemic and what you've been doing with Pfizer?
I'm really energized by the incredible complexity of our industry. I appreciate, and maybe more recently, because of what I've seen through this pandemic, the impact a company like ours, or an impact that our industry can have on the world. And in many ways, it's just fueled that curiosity, even more. So I just think that I'm just going to be doing something like this for a very long time. And, with the hope that though COVID is really just you might say this vaccine is a once in a lifetime breakthrough, but with the hope that there will be many, many other breakthroughs that I will be able to have some role in.
I do have a question, if I may, regarding the vaccine. The type of IP that was used to develop this particular vaccine, with future potential pandemics coming down the road, do you think we're all in a better situation to be able to come up with vaccines for future pandemics?
I think what I can say with confidence is that this mRNA technology, when applied, to the right situation is incredibly powerful. If there is a great match of this technology with the disease that we're trying to tackle, when those two things come together, then yes, I have a lot of confidence that this technology will allow us to come up with new versions, new vaccines, whatever it is to deal with, emerging threats. We've learned a lot. We've learned, and beyond the technology, we've also learned a lot about, how we can gear up our manufacturing, how we do clinical trials, the tools and the technologies that we used, a lot of digital, a lot of technology. Our own decision-making has changed. Science can really change the course of life. And I think for us, having this conversation, and for those of us, in this industry, working in this industry, there isn't another more powerful example of why it is that we need to continue to do what it is that we're doing, and why innovation and creating the right environment for us to be able to create these innovations is vital, because this is at the center of so many more things that we have to do and so many different diseases that we have to tackle for the world.
Well, thank you. And I just want to ask, before we close, what was the impact to you personally, Angela, when the vaccine, the announcement after the trials, what was the impact to you?
Well, this has been a deeply personal journey for me for many, many, many months. It began for me, like for everyone here, probably in March, when very abruptly we had to just pack our bags, leave our offices, and go home. I vividly remember, every night watching CNN, seeing the infections rise, and then every milestone that we hit with this vaccine. And I have very vivid memories of looking at the data, looking at all the stuff that was going on, the decisions that were made, the candidate that we picked, the day we went into clinical trial, and so on and so forth. The day that I signed my first contract, which was with the US government in July. And so all this leads up to the day, November 8th, Sunday, when we realized and we heard the great news of the fact that our vaccine was 95% effective. And that was, a moment that you will just never forget, your entire life. And so I was overjoyed for Pfizer and BioNTech. I was overjoyed for, the achievements of our scientists and the thousands, the 44,000 patients who put themselves out there to be in our clinical trials, who helped us to demonstrate that something was possible and that we were able to create this product. But I was mostly overjoyed by the fact that the world might see now multiple solutions because of the proof of concept from this one vaccine. And so, that's the other side of you, right? It's like these enormous emotions that you have every single day as a mother, a wife, a caregiver, a daughter, because these are, it's just not affecting somebody else. It affects all of us right here at home. And we're doing this not for other people. We're doing this for all of us, for humanity, our own families, our friends.
Angela, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your personal journey. It's very inspirational. I love your tenacity and, having you be part of all of this. We are now part of your journey because of the effect of the vaccine that we'll have on all of us.
Thank you, Dawn. It was great having this time with you, and all the best.